Derrick Lewis just accidentally saved his career, coming straight out of the gate with the Jorge Masvidal-inspired flying knee, which flopped De Lima to the canvas like a sack of potatoes. Lewis competed in a plethora of street fights and backyard scraps in his pre-MMA career, much like Jorge Masvidal. Wait. 3-piece and a soda? Flying knee? Street fighting before MMA? I've never seen Derrick Lewis and Jorge Masvidal in the same room, that's all I'm saying. After finishing De Lima off on the ground, he celebrated by removing his pants and treated us to a celebratory hip thrust, looking like me before getting the shower and the playlist is on. The guy's a straight low-key star, and I think he's Joe Rogan's new favourite fighter.
Look at this guy! Oh, the shorts for Joe Rogan! Derrick!
I'm telling you right now, if Calvin Klein was smart, they'd hook this brother up with a campaign. Now, besides being a hilarious guy behind such classics as Where's Ronda Rousey's Fine Ass At, he's also a good dude. And during the flood caused by Hurricane Harvey in 2017, Lewis allegedly pulled an estimated 100 people from the flooded waters in Houston, Texas. In a previous video, I mentioned chubby butterbean heavyweights with little talent other than the ability to hit hard. Derrick Lewis absolutely fits that bill, hence why I used an image of him during said description. Lacking any semblance of ground game or even takedown defense, but luckily being the hulking guy he is, it's no issue, bruv, just stand up. Why has everybody got to struggle when you can literally just stand up? He focuses his game around his vicious hooks and right uppercuts, which are devastating to his opponents. He's also a ruthlessly hard hitter. Prob's not quite reaching the pinnacle of the Ford Escorts of Deontay Wilders and the Francis Ngannous, but still, you wouldn't let your kid tickle his armpits, you know what I mean? He has never been considered to be someone with illuminating genetic talent or ability like the John Jones types. He's just a big dude who, much like Daniel Cormier, loves chicken and sometimes lets his inherent ability to hit the bedrock of violence get the better of him. And due to that inherent ability, Lewis was charged for aggravated assault and sentenced to a 5-year prison sentence shortly after finishing college, of which he served 3.5 of those 5 years. Derrick saying that he ran into a member of the Ku Klux Klan on a night out. A fight ensued shortly after a series of insults were thrown, and Derrick Lewis left the victim blinded in one eye, even though they were in possession of a shotgun. So why am I so confident that he has saved his career at UFC 291? Well, I'm glad you asked. This was Derrick Lewis's last contracted fight with the UFC, and he is now set to become a free agent and be able to move to a different league, but his time with the UFC would discontinue. You see, since Francis Ngannou moved from the UFC to the PFL have been scouting for heavyweights to feed to Francis.
List. Find me somebody, get me Joe Bones.
And I'm sorry, but name one heavyweight besides Ngannou in the PFL. So naturally their eyes would drift to the revitalised star of UFC 291 with his hot ball bag and his happy-go-lucky nature, and see dollar signs.
Did you plan to open with that flying knee?
Hell no. I just said I'm gonna throw some if it lands.
Their ideal plan being to make Derrick Lewis versus Francis Ngannou 2, and maybe even give Derrick some marketing this time, which is what the UFC should have done, let's be honest. Not to mention, Derrick won that first fight against Francis, so the fight would definitely draw some eyes. Dana White is a bit of a ruthless businessman, and as I've covered previously, he will seep to the lows of Salt Queenhood to prevent the success of a rival organisation. So if you really think Dana will just let Lewis go after UFC 291's performance, then you're sadly mistaken. I guarantee the contract will be extended, there's absolutely no doubt about it. Letting him go to the PFL after being the hero of UFC 291 would just be silly goose energy on Dana's part. Having a somewhat turbulent career, he has gone from the heights of beating Curtis Blades and Francis Ngannou and the lows of being beaten by Spivak, Pavlovich, Gan and Tai Tuivasa, gaining himself the reputation as a gatekeeper of the heavyweight division. However, the aforementioned win over Francis Ngannou is huge. and he's recently put the chicken and root beer aside and actually tried putting some work into his training camps. And to his credit, he's dropped a whole Henry Cejudo in weight by the looks of it, and has outlined abs visible, if you squint. I find it funny how the vice of an ex-convict in Derrick Lewis is root beer, whereas you've got half the fucking UFC roster just inhaling the devil's dandruff before every tweet and shit. So if Lewis stays focused and creates an environment in his training that is more conducive to going toe-to-toe with the top 5 and having a Charles Oliveira-style renaissance, then I believe he has a future with the UFC and may even climb back up the rankings. And I am 99% sure the UFC will be extending his contract very shortly. I'd be extremely surprised if they didn't do that. So Derrick, congratulations on saving your entire career. No doubt it was absolutely unintentional, but what a checkmate move regardless. The flying knee and hot balls combo together, absolutely sensational. Cheers.